And welcome to Coffees with Toffees, the morning show for gamers by gamers, bringing you all the best in Dota 2 gaming entertainment as well as the real hard-hitting news. That's right, I added hard-hitting today. If you like the show, you can follow me at Toffees_Dota2. Keep in mind that you can always catch our shows live, or not live, I guess recorded, on YouTube as well as SoundCloud right after the show finishes up. So for those of you who like to listen on the drive or at the gym, the SoundCloud RSS is alive and well, and you can sign up for those RSS feeds as of right now. So excited to announce that. And I'm joined here today by my co-conspirator in so many things, the only other man not to have to be traveling to TI today, Gorgon the Wonder Cow. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I think most of them have already done the traveling, but I'm good. True. I'm just sitting here playing a little bit of arms race and getting ready for the day, you know?
Yup, and I gotta, I've been trying to find guests for the show over the last week or so to add to, the me and Gorgon dynamic that we have. And everyone is in Seattle or traveling to Seattle today. I think I actually have two of the guys from the 82L are maybe calling in from the road today at some point to give us the amateur organizer's perspective and maybe what they're excited about as a team that's traveling. I'm trying to get some other perspectives, and that'll be pretty exciting. So for those of you who don't know, Gorgon and I are a casting team. We're committed to getting to TI5. Our original plan was to go to TI4 with loudspeakers and stand outside doing our own casting from the exterior, but we decided that just wasn't cost effective. So instead, we got the morning show up and running. So this is our TI5 attempt, I guess, at casting. But what we're going to bring you today, guys, is a talk about what's going to be happening at TI. Primarily, we're going to talk about the teams. We're going to talk about some stats. Gorgon here is the editor-in-chief for High Ground TV and has been putting together some really great stuff. I've actually pulled it up, so if you're watching the YouTube or the live stream, you'll get to see some of the cool stats that he's made. If not, you can go over to High Ground TV and check them out. I'll give you that information as the show progresses. We're going to talk about the prize pool, we're going to talk about the hype, we're going to talk about ESPN, and we're going to talk about potato salad, as well as regular news. So
fucking potato salad.
Right? I've only got 18 more days to milk this. So that said, though, we're going to get right into it and get rolling. It looks like a big shout out, though, to our viewers who have joined us this morning. Doves Kibo and the First Panda checking in over on the chat. The guys, if you are watching or if you're listening on the back end, feel free to always join us. We're here around 7 a.m. every weekday morning, bringing you all the best in morning news. So, TI, this is it, man. This is what we've been waiting for the last year. It starts today, the main event. Are you hyped?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's going to be good. ESPN is officially doing some coverage of Dota, which is a nice step in the direction of having some quote-unquote legitimacy. Not that it really matters, but it will increase, the amount of visibility that we have, maybe increase the amount of sponsorship action that we get outside of that. Mountain Dew, Red Bull, exclusive sponsorship wheelhouse where we're just getting Doritos and gamer products sponsoring teams, and maybe get some outside money into Dota and really kick it up a notch and get it into international sporting world. Although we're peaking well above professional golf tournaments and stuff. Yeah. So it's not like we're not doing well for ourselves, but I think it's just a nice step to see that the world realizes that we're at least a big enough minority that they have to pretend to care about us.
They have to pretend to care about us. It's the first time that there's going to be pub stomps in every single, well, not every single, but in tons of cities in America. You can almost anywhere in the country drive to a pub stomp. For those who don't know what a pub stomp is, that is a local pub where a bunch of Dota fans are getting together and are just going to go crazy and watch Dota. So if you haven't already looked it up, check it out. There is a pub stomp, for instance, in the Boston area on Monday night that I believe I will be attending if all goes as planned, but we'll have to figure that one out, and I still haven't spoken to the wife about it, so she'll decide whether or not I get to go to the bar late on a Monday night to watch Dota, though it's not the same as going out to watch baseball. I imagine I'm not going to get as sloshed, but we'll find out the hard way, I suppose. That said, though, check out the local pub stomps. There's nothing more fun than watching the game with your friends, as I'm sure you all know, and if you can't make it out to Seattle for TI, at least make it to a place where you can share it with other people who enjoy it too. So I think my favorite part part of TI so far has been all the tweets coming in on Twitter and seeing people tweet things like, yesterday I think Havoc, one of the guys, tweeted, "Hey, I'm on the plane and I just heard a conversation behind me about favorite to play supports." And I was like, that's awesome that people are on planes together, in airports together. What was it? Somebody else posted a picture, I forgot who it was, that said, I found some Dota peeps, and he was at the airport food court waiting for a transition flight and had about 6 guys with Dota gear on sitting with him at the table. So, big fans flying into Seattle. It's got to be a great event. You know, there's over 10,000 people who have tickets. Find that for yourself in your local city, I guess is the moral of the story.
Yeah, this is a really interesting time of year, too, because people actually come out of their hiding holes. Like, for traditionally, video game players and fans, and especially esport fans, are kind of troglodytes. Like, we spend a lot of time in our own little coveys, and this is the point in time where people are actually getting out into the world in a really big official way that, like, you can test the migratory patterns of the Dota fans across to the great mecca of Seattle. So, you know, it's not like there aren't a lot of people playing Dota. You can find them. If you just ask around the room, I'm sure you can find a lot of people. But I don't tend to meet people in real life that are into Dota except at Dota events.
That's true.
For whatever the case.
And it is something where mention it to people who you know that play. For instance, there's a lot of folks in town I know who do play the game, but don't play it competitively. And when I've mentioned it in passing over the last week, hey, make sure you watch the International this weekend, a lot of them go, "What? The International?" And then it's like they don't know what I'm talking about. And then once I tell them, they get super excited and want to watch it. So keep that in mind, as well as tracking migratory patterns for Dota players. That cracks me up. So it's going to be pretty good. It's going to be a lot of fun. And what I'd like to talk about first is the 8 teams who are playing. Basic stuff on them. If you guys, before we get to the higher ground stat stuff, which I think is really, really good, but pretty gosh darn beefy, we're going to take you over to Gozu. For those of you who don't go to Gozu from time to time, yeah, I know. Gordon works for literally Join Dota and Higher Ground, or High Ground TV. The only company he doesn't work for in the business is Gozu, and I keep using them on the show. But take note from this, perhaps, things like their summary. And the reason we're going there is they have a 8-team summary that gives all of the earnings and basic picks for each team in a very nice broken down system. So I'll actually link that to you just so that you know where we are. But it is actually really clean and a nice glance. Now that said, I'm going to show you the matchup stats that Gorgon prepared a little bit later, and I think you're going to be blown away by how easy and glance based that is. So did you do that with the help of Phage Guy?
No, that was all me. Phage helped me do some stats for the other upper bracket match, but I haven't actually gotten a chance to present those.
Okay.
So, because I'm not a graphic designer by any means, and doing even the somewhat eyesore-ish version that I did, it took me a very long time and a lot of effort just to make it look that good. So, if there are anybody listening who knows graphic designer who's looking for potentially doing some partnership work, they should have them contact me or Toffees or whatever, so that because I don't particularly care to do that end of the work, but you have to be able to present it, right? So
absolutely.
Anyway, so I have some stats on the other stuff that I didn't get time to put in, but this was the important match, so it was the match that I did.
Absolutely. So guys, if you are graphic designers and you want to get into the Dota scene a little bit deeper, at GodCow Dota, editor-in-chief of High Ground TV, is looking for some help, so get in contact with him. I'm also looking for some extra graphics for the show as well, so at Toffees_Dota2, we'd love to work with you. So, team previews. Bum, bum, bum. First team up on the list, EG. It's alphabetical, not favoritism, but I am American, so what can I say? Maybe we're bringing EG up for a reason. EG, the first team to be featured of the 8. The winnings this season that they've brought home, achievement-wise, is 10 grand out of the Monster Energy Invitational, then second place in the Natalic Pro League. They got first at the MLG TKO. They got third in the Star Ladder Season 9 over in Kiev. The Summit, they got first place. Dream League, they picked up 6th, but still, we mentioned that because it was a pretty big payday, $20,000 for 6th place. D2L Western Challenge, they got first and second at ESL 1 Frankfurt. So a big year for them so far. Their biggest payday has been at the Summit for first place, 46 grand, and for ESL they made 40,000 for second place. So some decent paydays, a good year of winning, though this is to keep in mind and put it in perspective, if they win this one, their winnings are going to be in the ballpark of about $4.7 million, I think, at this point. So that's a pretty big difference between the $40,000 I got from ESL One Frankfurt. That said, though, they put up some pretty good performances this year.
Yeah, I mean, they, especially over the last about 4 months or so, have really stepped into gear. Everybody knows that EG is one of the favorites for going into the final 3. Whether or not they'll make it into that top 2 slot is kind of up in the air, but I think especially on the American side, everybody just kind of assumes that they'll make it there, and it would be kind of surprising if they didn't. One of the holdouts there, though, is that their first match in the main event is against DK, which is, once again, one of those probably 3 teams that has, for the entire event, been assumed that's going to be one of the final 2, if not the winner. So.
Absolutely. They definitely have their hands full. Heroes that they obviously like to play, and we'll go over it a little more in detail. The matchups are, let's see, I know that they like the Mirana. I know that they came up with the idea of the Treant Protector in the current meta. And they've also been running some Faceless Void, I believe, as well as, I'm trying to think of the hero trends, the Lycan, I think. So, are they Lycan, or is that a DK move?
They don't do the Lycan as much. DK does the Lycan a fair amount. They've done it, I think it's 7 times over the last patch. But Lycan ends up getting banned out more often by every team right now.
Right.
So you don't actually see a lot of Lycan play, even though there are some teams that you would consider Lycan a signature hero of theirs. Right. Nobody lets them play it. Like, I don't think there's a team in the international. I haven't actually checked this, but I would be surprised if there was a single team at this level play that bans like in less than 70% of games.
Makes sense. So, yeah, that is, so EG, that's your introduction to them. They are a team out of the U.S. for the most part. They've got a smattering of Canada tossed in there, but they are the North American hope for the future of esports. I shouldn't say because there's a lot of esports out there, but as far as Dota 2 goes, in a system that has long been dominated by European and Chinese teams, they came out of the woodwork this year and have really just stormed onto the scene. Last year, our only hope was really Liquid, and this year, EG has just far and away eclipsed their performance. So all of America and Canada's hopes lay on the shoulders of EG, and they will probably increase viewing a lot, to be honest with you. Anybody who doesn't watch American sports, if you're not from the States and you're watching this show today, understand one thing about U.S. and Canadian fans, especially U.S. fans, is that we love anything that allows us to cheer for a national team. Period.
Oh. You know, we like to win. We're winners.
We are winners. But like that said, we can go an entire 4-year period where nobody in the country watches soccer. We go into the World Cup, and the turnout is bigger. We actually have the second biggest rate of people missing work to watch the World Cup in a country that doesn't even care about soccer because it was a chance to watch the U.S. So this, I would not be surprised to see that ESPN3 stream get some hits should EG continue to advance in this tournament.
Yeah, if you wanted to ruin the U.S. economy, I mean, the most effective way to do it would just be to set up a large series of international competition, like the international getting lost in a well competition, the international climbing trees slightly taller than yourself competition, and make each of them 1 week long. We would miss so much work and throw so much money into traveling to support our teams just so that we could say that we won and that we felt like a part of it, that our entire economy would come to shambles.
You know, it's ridiculous.
If we produced anything in the country anyway, which we don't really anymore, so it doesn't really matter.
We would just start, we'd make tons of beer. Our economy would live completely on the sales proceeds from those tickets. So somehow we turn it to our advantage, but that's exactly right and ridiculously true. As crazy as it sounds. So Cloud9 is going to be our second team in the tournament. They are starting out at the top of the losers bracket. They'll be playing against Navi tomorrow. That said, if their performances so far this year have not been as strong, they've got the ones worth mentioning are second in the Monster Invitational, third at MLG TKO, second in the Dota Champions League, number 2, which was a $31,000 prize. So that is a little bit. That's a pretty big prize for a tournament that wasn't quite as big, I don't think. Second in DreamHack and second in the Dream League Season 1, and that was their biggest payday at $41,500. So they had a decent season. It's been a little bit rough. A lot of small paychecks, a lot of 5th through 8th place finishes. They haven't really been able to dominate the top of the scene, but They're coming in. They looked really good during qualifiers. They looked really good during the Phase 3 play-in to get to the losers bracket. And I think Eternal Envy started a little bit shaky in this tournament, but I feel like he has been getting stronger and stronger with every game that goes by.
This is a team that started really, really, really strong into the second quarter of the season, like that just after December period of time. They were out of nowhere suddenly like Europe's best. You know what I mean? They were taking everybody down, and Dota moves so fast that it doesn't end up working out that way, that if you're sitting on top at the beginning of the year, halfway through the year, you could be a tier 2 team if you don't have the ability to keep up with meta shifts, if your opponents really focus you down, which is exactly what happened to Cloud9. Like, teams started to just focus in and make sure that they were shutting down EE, and the rest is history. You know, the team is not fully able to adapt to everybody considering them a tier 1 team. You know what I mean? That's what it came down to, I think.
Absolutely. They are a great team. They're very dynamic, and when they play well and play together, it is beautiful to see. That said, though, it is not uncommon to see Cloud9 in those inevitable positioning mistakes or exerting a bit of over-aggression and they run it. And that's fine. And most times that's great. That'll get you third. But when you go up against a team like DK and you find yourself even slightly out of position, they're going to drop the ban hammer on you, and you're going to pay the price. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Will Cloud9 exhibit the patience and self-control that they need to make these matches work for them? So I think that's going to be one of the keys to victory. Is Eternal Envy, who's their drafter, who's one of their leaders, is going to have to be able to keep that team in position the entire time. And that's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, the other thing that the other argument that you might make is that that's a lot of what people say about Na'Vi traditionally too, that they're a team that gets themselves way out of position. I mean, Xboxing is a thing, right? They're a team that drafts a little wild. They don't really seem to always have their strategy in place before they get their foot on the ground. But they're the only team that's gone to every grand final. So there's something to be said for that general play style. I just don't know that Cloud9 has perfected it the way old Na'Vi had. And obviously, Na'Vi today is not executing the way that we would expect the team to traditionally. So
Right. It will be, it's going to be interesting, and that's a great transition to the next team that we're talking about, which is Na'Vi. They are a team that is storied in the history of Dota 2. They have not won an international, correct?
Well, they did.
Which one was theirs?
They won number 1, didn't they?
I thought number 1 was IG.
I think number 2 was IG.
Okay, so we got
Alliance.
Na'Vi, IG, Alliance. That's the order. Okay, I knew there was the 3 out there. So they've won a TI. They have brought home multiple tournaments. They're probably one of the biggest fan favorites in the world in terms of people just want to watch Na'Vi. And a large portion of that, for those of you who may be getting ready to watch the games, is attributed to one of the most arguably exciting, dynamic, and lovable mids in the world in the form of Dendi, Dondo, whatever you want to call him. His pudge made him famous, but his... what would you call it? His like little smirk that he does in every single shot, in every show, and every interview. That he's just famous for popping up in the background of an interview and giving this like rascally little look and then disappearing. Like, the kid just loves Dota, and it's hard not to love the team when he's led by a guy like that. So on the opposite side, they also have one of the most polarizing members in Dota in the form of Loda, a guy who people either love or don't love at all.
Yeah, wait, what are we talking about here?
I'm saying that Na'Vi runs the gambit, and they've got polarizing people as well as folks who just everyone absolutely loves.
I think you.
I went to Alliance. I did went to Alliance.
Yeah, you said Loda from Alliance.
I did.
I think maybe, wait, now I'm confused as to what we're talking about.
Never mind. It's just early in the morning, so forgive me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go a little bit crazy. That said, no, we'll get to that Alliance, because I want to talk about the polarizing nature of Alliance's team. Dubs is going to kill me, and everybody who's listening is going to be like, what? I'm super confused. So I did just jump teams. Leave me alone. That said, no. Na'Vi, one of the most lovable teams, been there for a long time, and they are a little bit polarizing in the fact that I think fans sometimes get frustrated with how they feel like they come into tournaments maybe a little unprepared.
They are also polarizing. I mean, I'm not gonna leave you hanging. They are a polarizing team because they are so well loved and such a legacy by a lot of people just hate them because they're so successful traditionally. And the other thing is their style is really very good viewership style. Like, it makes for a lot of action, but a lot of people see their players, especially players like Havost, who just gets caught out all the time. Dendi, too, to a decent degree, gets caught out more than most pro players do or even should, but he makes opportunities in doing so. So it really comes down to, are you a fan who wants to see a team executing perfectly, or are you a fan that wants to see a team taking risks to execute above the line that would be drawn? Because a team like DK, with the exception of Ice Ice Ice, doesn't typically take as many risks.
Right.
They typically execute just extremely, extremely well. Whereas a team like Na'Vi is all about putting it on the line and just trying to double down. And just put it back on black and just let it ride all day long, and hopefully they'll ride themselves into a couple $1 million.
And that's the key. And you know what? They've already ridden themselves into a crap ton of money. So the guys in the main event who are making it through to this point, I believe they're guaranteed a minimum of $500,000 a team already. So these 8 teams are already making more money off of this game, more likely than they have ever made in esports. Probably combined for a lot of them. So that's something to keep in mind.
That's about what Dendi made last year.
Right.
He made something like $440,000 last year.
And that's with his sponsorships, I think, and stuff, right?
Yeah, that's I think with all of his income, I read, I can't source this, but I read that he made like $440,000. So.
Makes sense, and they're pretty popular. There are also, they're one of the biggest teams out in the European scene. So their merchandising sales, etc., is just massive. That said, big achievements for them in the 2014 season. The two most notable, I think, in my opinion, are that they did win the Star Ladder Series 8. So we got to watch them that. They took home $62,000 for that one. And they did get first in the Dota 2 Champions League, where they took home another $62,000. Other than that, though, their finishes have been not the greatest. Now, they did win the Captain's Draft, which was a fun event, but I wouldn't consider that part of the canon of events that you need to win.
No, and nobody knows what that is. You know what I mean? It's an event that happens, and then you forget about it. There's a million of them.
And everything else, so they finished between 4th and 12th place. So they haven't had the most exquisite season in terms of outrageously strong, consistent results, but they've won some pretty big tournaments.
Yeah, they are just a team that is kind of down at the moment. They are the only team attending TI that has a higher win rate with second pick than first pick. So that's something to keep in mind. That speaks exactly what I was saying. They are a reactive team. They like to basically play out of the gut. They like to see what their opponent is doing and then move into it, and they like to take big risks. And part of that is counterpicking people and making sure that you are being able to take advantage of those big positional errors that your opponent might make, or force out those positional errors. They're a fun team to watch. Whether or not you like them, they make teams play better typically. And it's just really a shame that they're not playing to their fullest moving into the season. Or moving out of the season, I guess I should say.
Yep, but they're also a team you can't write off. I'd expect them to come out and do some interesting things, so we'll look for that. Moving on to the next feature, the Kings of Dota, who literally have named their team Dota Kings. DK, probably one of the most legendary teams in the sport, one of the most popular teams by far in a worldwide sense, and I would venture to say the favorite to take home the Aegis at the end of TI this week is... Let's talk about how they have an incredible roster made up of all-stars from all over Asia. Let's talk about the fact that they win constantly, that every other team is scared of them when they walk in the door. I mean, what can you say about them that's negative, other than the fact that sometimes maybe there's a little bit of I feel like sometimes I see a synergy break every once in a while between like Mushi and Ice 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 and the other 3 like OG members of DK. But even that is marginal at best.
I imagine that has something to do with language barriers, because obviously there's 2 members who are not Chinese and 3 members who are Chinese, and that makes a significant difference in teams. This is a team that's so strong that Chinese teams... This was rumored for a little while ago. Some players in the area, including Black, have verified it, although it has not officially been taken care of in any sort of way by DK's management, that Chinese teams won't scrim them anymore, because Chinese teams, a lot of Chinese teams and management and esports personnel, A, are scared of this team, whether or not they're going to admit it publicly, and B, don't see them as a full Chinese team because they don't have all Chinese members. So they see them as this sort of mug-blood team, and they won't scrim them. It's very difficult for DK to get scrims, and even so, they are just destroying it. Their win rate against TI teams, like other teams moving into the TI, and non-TI teams is very, very similar. Like, it's 65% overall for this patch.
Wow.
And 66% against only TI4 teams. Now, that discrepancy is normally much bigger. Like, EG has such a big discrepancy between their against TI4 teams and against their just all teams in general that people were confused by the stats thing that I put out the other day because they thought that the stats couldn't be right. It's 75% overall in 6.81, but only 61% against other TI4 teams.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, it's, even then, though, like, it's just massive. That's a massive win rate.
It's still a massive win rate, but the fact that you have a differential 14% for EG shows that, you know, they're doing a lot of their work up against teams that are just below TI level, and that's where they get a lot of their notoriety, is that they come out with these huge wins against teams that people know but aren't the best of the best. DK, it doesn't matter whom they're playing, they will dominate them 66% of the time.
Yeah, is absolutely true. And to show that, let's talk about their 2014 end of 2013 season. So this is just since the last international. Second place at the Red Bull Esports Championship League, first place G League, first place Cena Club, first place Star Ladder Season 9 in Kiev, second at the WPC, second at the Summit, first at the Esports Champions League, first at Sunt CDEC, second at the GEST, and then a couple of third place finishes that still netted them a few extra grand. Their biggest win by far was the Star Ladder. You guys remember that last Star Ladder was excessively big, and their first place finish got $85,000 put in their pockets. That said, this is bigger, and this is one team who genuinely, when I look at this list next year for TI, could very well have a poor $4.7 million prize pool first place sitting right there. So, looking pretty interesting.
It says something about this team that, honestly, some of those second places I was surprised by. Like, the fact that they didn't take the Summit really kind of took me aback. I didn't expect EG to pull that one over. You know what I mean? But if this team does not make it into the finals bracket one way or another, I will be very surprised.
I will be flabbergasted, especially keep in mind, guys, one of the news stories going on, or one of the thread lines that will probably be talked about, especially if they make a documentary on this TI, is Lanham, one of the mainstays of DK, one of the pimps of the league, is announced his retirement as soon as this tournament is over. So he would like to go out with enough money to literally retire with, or at least set himself up for whatever he's doing after this. And that's going to be a pretty big storyline. So look for that to continue. They'll talk about it a lot. I'm sure ESPN will eat that one up. The idea of a 20-something-year-old player saying, I'm retiring at the end of this season. So that should be pretty interesting. So keep an eye on that one. We'll roll over to VG, another team coming out of the Asian scene right now. These guys have a lot of potential. They put up some really good games recently. So this is a team who, when you look at the grand scheme of things, they're what I would say top 3 in the Chinese scene. They've had some trouble winning tournaments to date, but they have been very, very strong in TI so far.
Yeah, they've been abnormally strong in TI so far, actually. I mean, they don't win a majority of their games against TI4 teams. They are a lot more predictable than a lot of the teams. I mean, in terms of their laning, they run solo mid and solo hard, like suicide lane and solo mid, more than any other team in the world, probably, but definitely more than any other tier 1 team. I mean, they solo mid literally more than 95% of their games. I think it's 97%, if I recall correctly. Of their they solo mid. And no team refuses to mix things up that significantly, I guess. But they are predictable. I mean, they're good players. And they've been executing extremely well so far this TI, but they definitely have a couple of weaknesses that can be exploited.
Yep, definitely look for them. So basically what I'd say is, I mean, they're in the winning bracket. They're up against Newbie for the auto spot to move out towards the semifinals. So kudos to them. the thing about VG is look for them. They're kings of planned execution. So what they do is they come in with a strategy, they know what they want to accomplish, and they pursue that goal. To me, they're not as flexible as some of the other teams are. Teams like, for instance, EG's been doing it a lot lately. I feel that IG has done it pretty well as well in this tournament, in Cloud9. Teams that adapt very well to what their opponents have thrown at them. VG, in my opinion, I've seen them lose a couple of games, and it always seems like they were just not able to execute what they wanted to and didn't respond very well into changing up, say, laning setups.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep an eye on. Once again, I maybe get some flack for saying this. Newbie's the one that came out of the elimination matches. So I'll scroll up so you guys can see what happened. Last week, there was a play-in in Phase 3, where the teams who were on the bottom of the brackets had to play each other to earn the last spots in the Winners League as well as the Losers League. Newbie was on the fringe of being executed from the tournament, and they fought their way, went 3 for 3, pulled the hat trick, and made their way into the winners bracket, where they will be going up against VG. So that's pretty awesome for them, right? The question is, can they beat VG? And I honestly think that today's game, Newbie, in my opinion, and many may not agree. In fact, I'll check out Dota to see if they do there. Oh no, people do agree. Newbie is in a position to beat VG and move into the semis.
Oh, I think 100% they're in a position to beat VG. If I were to make a bet on that game, I would bet on Newbie. They've just executed a lot.
Yep.
They slumped in the middle. But they opened up really strong. They ended really strong. They're the team, more of their games than any other team at TI, including eliminated teams. A higher percentage of their games are against other TI teams because they don't compete as much at the mid-level bracket. Like, they focus in on a couple of tournaments and really hit it home. So 65% of their games as a team are against other teams that attended TI. That's not at TI. Like, 65% of their games as a team in their history are against other TI teams. So they know, especially the Asian teams, like, they know them better than any other team just from having spent that much time playing against them. I'm sure they scrim a lot more than teams like DK do as well, because DK can't get scrims. So, of course, Newbie does scrim a lot more. But no, I expect Newbie to at least move forward one more notch before things get really rough for them. But VG is definitely a tough competitor.
So they're going to have a little bit of a hard time, VG. That said, if we talk about notable achievements, really the only tournament they've won or done really well in recently with a decent prize pool is third place in the Summit, where they made $15,000. Every other prize that they've taken home this year has been $7,500 or lower. So they haven't gotten any big wins. They've been coming in anywhere from around third or fourth in the Asian leagues or the Asian tournaments, and in really honestly 4th to 8th place in kind of the international tournaments. So they have a lot to prove. They've already made more than any other amount they've ever made, so this is a huge deal for them. Getting to that semifinal slot is going to give them a huge bump in the earnings, so they're going to try their hardest. If VG has come with pocket strats, you will see them pulled out against Newbie today, so look for that.
Yeah.
Moving down for Invictus Gaming. Now, here's another interesting team. These guys, I believe that they did not have to play their way in. They are coming out of... No, I'm sorry, they had to play their way in. They lost to Newbie in the last round of play-in matches, and went from a seed that I believe was 4 or 5 into the losers bracket, where they're going to have to face off against LGD. Now, I don't think they'll have too much trouble with LGD. Personally, I like Invictus's style. They've been playing very, very well. Notable wins for them is first place in Red Bull, first place in the Natalic Pro League, first place in the WPC, GEST Challenge, and Nest the WVW. So they also got first at the ESL 1 Frankfurt, and that's a pretty massive one. So their biggest win to date was the WPC League Season 2. That was a $160,000 payday. They also got $80,000 off of the ESL 1 Frankfurt. So these guys are no rookies. They've been around a long time, including...
Yeah, that is their biggest
the international champion
this season, right? I mean, they were 2012. They won that $1 million prize pool.
And
up
so,
against Navi in that final where they took it 3-1. So.
yep. So they've won the million. I should say in this season they've done pretty well. That said, though, when you look at the Aegis, and some of you might not know this, when you play a game of Dota, there's an Aegis hanging above the shop where the game starts in your ancient space, in your fountain. And when you hover over it, it tells you every winner of the previous TI and the players who were on that team. When you hover over it, it says IG, and it's interesting to see that most of the players, if not all of them, I'm not great on my history, but are exactly the same as they were when they won TI.
So you wanted to talk about Alliance a little bit later. I'm just going to run into that now, maybe a little bit.
Sounds good.
Because IG, obviously, they won TI2. And now here's some notable statistical work that will run right into this Alliance bit that you want to talk about, in that after TI2, before TI3, they really laid back. They only played 76 games.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my notes, and I can't read that number. But I believe my handwriting said 76. So they played 76 games. Between TI2 and TI3. And TI3, they kind of underperformed, and a lot of people were not that enthused by their overall performance. In this patch, they've played 82 games. So they've already played more in this patch than they did in the entire TI3 season. This year, but since TI2, they've played 260-plus games. So they've been playing a lot stronger lately. They've been playing a lot more lately. They've been scrimming more. They've been winning more. And this is another one of those teams that some people say this is one of those teams that we expect top 2. I would say top 4. I don't necessarily see them easily edging out DK or EG, but they can definitely make a run for it.
Yeah, I think so. I think part of the problem that they're going to run into is when you look at the way the lineups are going to go, whoever loses the DK-EG game is going to move into the losers bracket up against whoever wins IG-LGD. So that means that while I think, will handle LGD pretty comfortably, and don't quote me on that. LGD could get an upset. LGD is a very fluid team that I like their style. However,
I wouldn't bet on them though.
I would not bet on them.
I wouldn't put my rares on that match.
No.
I think LGD got the short end of the stick there, moving up against IG round 1.
So they're going to have a tough win there. IG is going to move in though, and that means they have to go up next against EG or DK, which is a much tougher losers bracket than the other side of the coin, which most likely will be VG versus a Navi or a Cloud9. So IG, while they could very well get into a top 4 in this tournament, I don't know that they will, simply because they didn't get the best seed. And that's going to be an important part of this tournament as far as payouts go. So something to keep in mind there. They've had some pretty notable wins, like we said we talked about, so look for some great things from them. But I don't think that this is going to be their returning year to take home another TI. All right. Team Newbie is the next one to talk about. We're almost done with our teams here.
Didn't we all just talk about Team Newbie?
We did talk about it, but we didn't talk about their winnings. So we chatted about them because of the game. But just so that you guys know, they are sort of a all-star team, is I think I kind of want to call them, out of Asia. Another big up-and-comer. They formed up this year, if my memory serves me correctly. And if I make any mistakes, especially on the Asian teams, please have a little bit of forgiveness, as I usually cover strictly North American Dota and South American Dota, so I've had to really...
Asian or European teams, right?
Right. Shut your face. I've had to really expand my study, okay? I'm just a small-time caster who does the local events. I'm not used to these big teams and all their cool players. So anyway, Newbie is up and coming. They've come onto the scene pretty strong this year with a first-place finish at the Mars TV Dota 2 League, but their biggest win to date was $16,000 in the pocket. They don't have a ton of wins in major tournaments. They are, however, when you look at it... Yeah, it's all been regional, and they haven't been internationally represented, but they are playing like crazy, and it's one of those teams where you look at them, and they remind me a little bit of a, kind of what an EG was maybe 6 months to a year ago, right? Like this idea of these guys coming together. I remember when they picked up PPD, and everybody was like, oh, is that going to really work out for the synergy of the team? And all of a sudden, they just started to really just climb, foot over foot, hand over hand, showing, we are a top-tier team. Newbie has been doing that over the last 6 months.
Yeah, that wasn't that was for EG, I think, like 4 months ago.
Actually. Oh yeah, okay, that's right.
It seems like a long time ago because esports moves fast.
And EG plays constantly.
Yeah, and they are, and plus we're in the West, so we see them in regional tournaments.
That's true.
Newbie plays a lot. They play a lot of regional tournaments, and I had the pleasure of casting some of the Sun CDE New Star for Join Dota, where they played fairly well through that, and I also do a little bit of casting over in that region once in a while when they need somebody. And so I've actually seen a little bit more newbie than I have some of the other Chinese teams that are at that borderline tier 2, tier 1 level. And it's clear why newbie's climbing up.
Absolutely.
They definitely know how to execute.
Now, as we talk about teams that are climbing up, let's talk about teams that have been sliding down just a little bit. And that brings us to our last team in the top 8, the LGD Dota All-Stars. They are a team that I don't want to say has, I don't know, they're a Chinese team. They've got hype. They've got history. But that said, they haven't had a great season. Their biggest win was the Dota 2 League Season 4, $25,000 they took home from that at the beginning of 2014. So that was right after the last TI. And since then, they've only been able to pick up a second in Natalic and a second in Mars TV. They've made a grand total of, it looks like, about $5,000 since Dota 2 League ended, and have had a really tough go of things so far in TI. They're starting out against IG. I honest to God think they're probably going to get knocked out right away. I would save my money and not bet on that match unless it's a 90% IG and you could really get a great value for an upset. But that said, LGD is a fluid team. They adjust well and they do react pretty well as well. So they could pull it out, but I just don't think the seeding has supported them at all in this tournament so far.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't really supported them at all. And once again, this is a regional team that plays basically regionally. They don't really have that much going for them on the international stage. LGD as a gaming house has been having trouble with their Dota. I mean, they just disbanded their international team within the last 8 months too. They just have not really had the ability to support their teams. It seems like there's some problem in that way, and part of that is that the teams aren't bringing in money. I don't know. I don't expect them to go very far, but if they do well on them, it will help get them back into that international scene, because this is a team with a lot of history. But there's not that much else to say about them.
Absolutely. So, let's see. So that's it. Those are your 8 teams. We're not going to talk about Alliance because Alliance got eliminated. So I decided we're not going to waste our time there. We will just move on. Real quick, the casters for the main event, the guys you're going to be seeing a whole lot this week are going to be LD. If you guys don't know Mr. Gorman, he is one of the heads over at BTS, a foundation in the sport. He'll be running alongside of, I believe, Luminous. So Lumi is a popular caster / color man coming out of GD Studios. He'll be running alongside of him. And then we've got Toby Wan will be working with Cinderin, as well as... No, I think I'll just be with Cinderin. So Cinderin, he's a pro that's come along. I think Toby thinks really highly of him. He does some really great color work, and the two of them make a really strong team. So those are your 2 primary caster teams for the main event. And then obviously we'll have the newcomer stream in the hands of Sunsfan and Purge, as well as Blitz. That stream is great. Those guys are all real funny. They're going to get Shane and Perry and Flax stopping in as well. So it's an interesting dichotomy, right? Because when you look at this, you're seeing 2 of the best casters in the world, 2 of the most famous casters in Dota, in the area of LD and Toby Wan are going to be main staging the staple stream for this event. However, I'm willing to put my money on the fact that Sunsfan, Purge, and Blitz are going to be the guys featured on ESPN.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think that they should be, but I think I don't know if ESPN has that much wherewithal. You know, like I think to ESPN, and I don't know this obviously. I haven't talked to anybody at ESPN. I think to ESPN, what they're trying to do is get people who they think don't watch traditional sports, which is rooted somewhat in fact and somewhat in fiction, to come and watch their channel for some other reason, not realizing that the people who are already into the game are going to be watching it on their computers with 100% rate. Like, nobody is watching it not on Twitch or Dota 2 client, right? So
both.
I don't know that ESPN is going to put it up trying to get people who aren't into the game into the game. And I honestly don't think that the newbie stream is even a good way to do that.
Right.
That is a stream for people who already kind of know what's going on, are already interested in the game, but just don't understand what the crap Toby Wan is talking about when he talks at 1,000,000 miles an hour with a bunch of lingo in an accent. Right.
And that's exactly it.
That's what the newbie stream is for. It's not for like, oh, I have no idea what this is. It's clearly not basketball. But I don't know where the remote is. Teach me this game in 4 minutes before I lose interest and look for the remote. Right. That's not really what it's for. I mean, Sunsfan and Purge are good at explaining the game to newer players, but they're not that good.
Absolutely. So that should be good. It should be interesting. I'm curious to see who they get, because I think what will probably happen is I would imagine that Valve will decide who goes into the ESPN stream. Like I assume that they're just giving us access to Uplink, but we'll find out. That'll be interesting. So big caster teams. I think to me a little bit of the Cinderin sort of. Was he in the last TI? What did he do for TI3? Do you remember?
I honestly can't remember. So for TI3, I didn't actually watch a lot of it live. I was on tour at the time, so I only actually watched 2 of the games live because I couldn't do anything. I was literally living out of a van at the time, traveling around the country on tour. So it was really an opportunely time for me.
Damn you, TI. Why won't you schedule it on Gorgon?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
And I'm thinking it still as you and I sit here in our prospective homes as all of our friends go to Seattle. So that said, let's talk about the prize pool a little bit. Distribution-wise, the prize pool is up to $10.8 million. Let me double check and make sure that is still an accurate number. We'll open up the old dotes.
Yeah, that's more or less accurate.
All right, so that is roughly what we're looking at. So 10.835 is, I guess it's 10.841 is currently what we're sitting at. Now, the distribution goes like this. First place, currently, 4,984,000. So they are close to hitting that 5 million mark, which means each player then gets $1 million. Second place,
their gaming house would take some out of it, and their sponsors would take some out of it. There's a whole thing. But yeah, each with about $600,000 to $700,000 is my estimate based on my very tenuous understanding of how the industry works.
And it depends on some contracts. I know some contracts are very different. I know that when a certain American team signed recently, the offers that they got were across the board unique. So there's no telling how these players get paid, but that's the prize. Second place is $1.4 million. Third place is $1 million, just over. Fourth is $800,000. $650 for fifth and sixth, and $514 for seventh and eighth. So that means anybody playing from here on out that you watch has already pocketed over $500,000. The difference between, you ready for this, winning the first match in this winner's bracket here. So these guys in the winner's bracket, the difference between winning it and losing it is going to be in the ballpark of about $300,000 guaranteed, if that makes sense.
Assuming the losing team then
doesn't come back.
Loses, right.
But if you lose, and I should say the difference is guaranteed pocket money of about $800,000. So,
it's not a guaranteed difference, but it's guaranteed pocket money.
Yep. Yeah. So it is a situation where this first game is a pretty big win because, like we said, I mean, the difference between winning and losing in this first round is equivalent to most teams' earnings over the course of 3 to 4 years at this point in time. So this should be pretty interesting. I will talk about, Dubs wants us to talk a little bit about the sound boost, and we'll talk about that as soon as we wrap up. And we'll actually link that into the venue. So venue right now, Seattle, the Key Arena, I've got a picture of it pulled up under what it normally looks like, and now we'll pull up a picture of what it looks like for TI. And for those of you who don't know, it is a massive stadium. I believe that's where the Seattle, what are they, the Sounders? What the hell is their basketball team called? Sonics, something like that.
Yeah,
back when I used to watch basketball, they were the Supersonics. I don't know if they still are nowadays. That said,
I'm from Michigan, so the Pistons are the only team that I care about, and the 90s are the only time that I care about.
Nice. That makes perfect sense, though. And anyway, so they've got, I mean, a picture's massive. Seats for over 10,000 people. Megatrons all over, I should say, Drumbatrons all over the place. And this is going to be a massive event. Surrounding it, they're going to have some LAN stuff set up in all the different rooms. I mean, this is the biggest esports event ever put together, so that's gonna be pretty exciting. The size of an NBA, it's an NBA stadium that sold out in less than an hour. That is insane.
Well, it's the difference is NBA is pulling just from people who live within usually a 35 to 40 minute radius, whereas this is pulling from people literally around the world. So when you have an audience that's willing to travel from around the globe to have a chance to maybe saunter in and find themselves a seat at the international, you're going to sell out.
Absolutely. It's so it's been pretty exciting. That's going to be that's kind of my prep out for the event that you're going to see. Now, something to talk about with the venue. There was a tweet sent out. Let me see where I put it. Here it is. By Dota 2. I'll slide that over to the screen so you guys can see it who are watching it live. This year at the International, we will have booth cam streams with audio from the booth. So they're going to have a full-time dedicated stream, much like you saw at the summit, where you're going to be able to watch the players and hear the players throughout the event. So there's a lot of mixed opinions on this.
Very mixed on this.
It seems like a lot of the Western fans, primarily North and South American, and a little bit of our Western Europeans, are not in love with the idea. However, I saw some posts from Vlad and a couple of other teams that say, sounds great to us. So where do you fall on this topic?
I think it's great if I can see what the teams are saying.
Right.
Because I would like to know. But in terms of the other teams having an archive of how the teams are communicating to each other, like this is the equivalent of going into the NFL
and getting playbooks,
and not just reading the playbooks, but also having a camera in the locker room at halftime when the coach is making the chat, the pick me up and saying, "Don't worry, we've got all these strategies in our back pocket. Don't worry about this. We always react." Like they've got to hold their tongue a lot and try to talk in code a little bit. And I don't think that is going to end up enlightening that much for the audience, maybe for this first time,
right?
But if this becomes a thing that is done overall, I don't think that the audience will actually learn that much from it, because I think that teams will start to teach themselves to talk in code just like
football does.
Plays are called, right? Just exactly like American football plays.
Well, that's it. It's gonna be a feed camera. They're gonna be able to stand in front of it if they need to, I would assume, or figure it out. More importantly, like you said, the danger comes from this is a $10 million tournament, and it's gonna be a live feed, and you can guarantee that the coaches for each team are connected to somebody over the wire who's in their base of operations, which means they can have staff watching the stream, putting together responses, and in between games, speaking into their ear and saying, "Hey, here's what we noticed. Here's what they're talking about. Here's how they're planning their attacks." And that's something to me that seems like could become a little bit of an unfair situation as the thing goes on. Don't get me wrong. Watching it as a fan, I'm excited about hearing the feed, knowing who has a potty mouth, knowing who gets excited. And, personally, I would prefer if they did this, and maybe at the end of the tournament or after each game, they gave us a highlight reel of things coming out of the booths. Does that make sense? Instead of letting us have a live feed where we hear everything. Because let's be honest, what we really want to see is Schwan standing up cheering when he gets a good kill. That's why we want to watch the webcam stream, not because we want to hear Arteezy cussing in his boxers. Maybe that too.
I mean, I want to see the stream. The reason I want to see it specifically is so that I can look at how each of these individual teams communicates and then watch for that impact their play style as an analyst, right? Like that's kind of what I do. I analyze the game, and I'm very interested in the way communication styles impact gameplay, and I'm very interested in getting any sort of insight I can get for the various styles of gameplay based on what they're saying to each other. However, that's what the other teams are interested in too, right? It's not like, oh, they went and called out Rosh at such and such time, so I'm going to go tell my team that at such and such time, go for Rosh. It's much more insidious than that. It is understanding how the team prioritizes, not just from their actions, but also from their self-described priorities. And that, if you know how a team is prioritizing things, then you can manipulate them. And the only benefit is that all these teams are going to be getting the same advantage over each other. Although I might argue that teams that speak English to each other are at a disadvantage because more teams from China or Southeast Asia or Europe speak English as well as their first language than the American teams and the English-speaking teams speak the other languages.
Definitely. So a quick comment from one of the viewers who wrote in and says, in before captains have touchscreen playbooks on their arms with each player seeing via Google Glass. So an interesting perspective of how the game could change, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see something like that happen where we'll start to see tap communication. We'll probably start to see things like that come through. In fact,
it's like, why do you need the Google Glass and the touchscreen? You literally have a screen that you're touching and a screen in front of the guy. I mean, we already have that. That is what the game is, right? So
it'll be interesting as to see how this affects the sport as it develops. I wasn't wild about the view in the summit, but maybe it'll work. So real quick, plug on, because we're running low on time, so I want to get through a couple more things. If you go over to highground.tv, I've got it pulled up on the screen right now. If you're listening and not watching, go ahead and do that. There's a really good breakdown of EG versus DK put together by Gorgon. Stats up there, comparisons of play, basically all of that stuff that you need to know to kind of talk about the matchup. And actually, it looks like what we'll do here real quick is I need to go grab something, Gorgon, so I would like to have you talk a little bit about the stats that you put together in terms of what to expect between the EG-DK matchup, and then when I get back, we can move on to the news. Does that sound...
All right, well... Yeah, that's all right. I'm going to go ahead and run through this, I guess, a little bit and just kind of talk to you guys about what you can kind of expect between EG and DK, statistically speaking. We are looking at two teams that are, as we had already said, two of the highest performing teams in the world. DK is a little bit more consistent with their overall win rate against teams both that are in TI4 and outside of TI4. DK tends to win these matches. DK's won 6 games to EG's 3 over the last season. EG has 3 heroes that are currently undefeated with at least 5 games against any team, and that is Templar Assassin and Storm Spirit with 5 wins and Brewmaster with 9 wins. DK has 2. One of them is the Lycan, who gets banned out just about every single game. And one of them is the Death Prophet, or Crobulus, who does not actually end up getting banned out that often at all. So you might expect a kind of a pocket Crobulus ban if this goes to a game 3. That is a hero that they've been able to run with great success as of late. Their most picked heroes are very similar. The difference is DK prioritizes that Rubik, which is an Asian pick. You don't really see that in the West very often, but he's extremely highly prioritized in Chinese Dota and to some degree Southeast Asian Dota. EG, they do have that PPD Treant, who is fairly highly prioritized as their 4th pick. Other than that, their picks are fairly similar. Their banned heroes, once again, fairly similar, although EG is a little bit afraid of the Treant as well. They ban him in their 3rd most banned hero. And because DK is an Asian team, they do have a high ban on the Enchantress. Enchantress, once again, in China and to some degree in Southeast Asia, is seen as a broken hero and gets banned a lot more and played a lot more often than we're actually used to seeing in the West here. So, taking a look at the trends of matches between DK and EG, what we see is that Enigma is picked almost 60% of the time, banned the rest of the time. He is, for every single match this year that has data available, has been picked or banned. Lycan has always been picked or banned, but almost always picked. Batrider has always been picked or banned, but has banned, or excuse me, always. Lycan is almost always banned. Batrider is banned 85% of the time and picked 15% of the time. Never picked in these matchups by either team has been the Treant Protector, who gets banned 85% of the time, the Vengeful Spirit, and then Morphling TA, Shadow Shaman, and Pugna. None of those heroes have ever been picked, although they have all been banned a fair amount, at least 25% of games.
Excellent. I am back. Sorry about that. I have a pregnant wife, and sometimes I'm required to carry things that may not otherwise be carried. So that said, did you have a chance to go over it, or what are we working on right now?
Yeah, we're down to the drafting styles, which to me is the most interesting thing.
Yeah.
So the drafting styles here is that DK has a lot more games played, but they have 13 more games played. But they've played 84 more heroes, and that includes all of the games so far in TI. But here's the really interesting thing to me, and this is some statistic work that I actually did for every single team. I've done some basic, I've adapted some economic statistics and converted them into drafting statistics. So something that you see in economics a lot is a specific type of index that measures the difference in wealth between the most wealthy and the least wealthy, right? 99% is the sort of lexiconal outcrop of that we hear a lot. So what I've done is I've actually converted the number of times heroes have been picked and converted that into a form of wealth, and then compared the heroes to each other to determine which teams have more equilateral drafting. The more equilateral the drafting, the less predictable is the team. DK, despite the fact that they have more games played, they actually have fairly more equilateral drafting than EG. Their top 25% of heroes, the heroes that they play the 25% most, are only about 60% of their overall hero picks. Whereas for EG, it's 70% for those ones. And then the bottom 25 actually is represented, whereas the bottom 25 of percent of heroes played by EG have never been drafted in the entire season. So that's something to keep in mind. DK has a lot more versatility in the draft.
So that said, that is the reason we did that. For those of you who might be wondering, the summary is that is our featured game for the day. It's going to be a massive one. I think it's definitely going to be the one to watch. The first game, the newbie VG game, is going to be good, but will it be the barn burner? Probably not. The EG versus DK is kind of like that playoff game you see early in the season of the two teams that are most likely to be playing for the Super Bowl, and that's exactly what this is. So we're covering it because it's going to be a huge game, and on the back end, it very likely are two teams that will see each other in the finals.
So who do you expect to win this round, this go through?
This is tough. I think, and it is a best of three, so we'll see how that goes. I think we go 2-1 in favor of EG, because I think EG is going to pull some pockets out to secure themselves a good win here.
I think if EG gets Dire side first, they win 2-1. I think if DK gets Dire side first, they win 2-0.
I like that. You used your statistics for that.
Yeah.
And that's because of the idea that EG has beaten DK 0 times as Radiant and 60% as Dire. So you're right. If they get Dire first, it means they get to run 2 times as Dire. Their win rate is exceptional, and they'll definitely just lose that one Radiant game. So
DK also does better. This didn't actually make it onto the draft sheet, but DK also does better with first pick. So if they do end up on Radiant with a 1-game advantage, and they also have a statistical advantage as first pick, which they'll probably have if they're on Radiant, in that particular case, they're going to be able to draft a little bit more comfortably. So I think if they have the 1-game advantage, they should be able to bring it through.
So based on gut picks, EG beats DK 2-1 coming out of Toffees. Based on the statistics from Gorgon, if they get Dire first, 2-1 EG. If they don't, 2-1 DK?
2-0 DK, I think.
2-0 DK, wow.
I think DK sweeps if they get Dire side first.
Well, there
Obviously,
you go.
this is super dependent on execution and things like that.
Right.
If I had to put my money where my mouth was, I would go for that long shot. Like that's a bet I'd be willing to make, even though it's against the odds.
Beautiful.
Like
that's the kind of stuff I like. That's what I like on the show. So we'll keep that in mind, and we'll talk about it when we get back on Monday as to whether or not he was right. Keep in mind, though, guys, I don't do shows on weekends, so this is our last one until Monday morning, and then Monday morning we'll get together and do a giant main event show, as obviously that's going to be what's happening all Monday, and that should be a pretty good round of events there as well. So that said, that is our sort of Dota 2 stuff that's going on right now. Is there anything else that you want to add before we move out of Dota 2 news?
No, I just have all this Gini coefficient work that I'm just sitting on, and I just kind of want to talk about the stats of that more, because I spent a fair amount of time harvesting the data and stuff. So wait, which team do you think has the least equilateral distribution of drafting, according to the statistical method?
Probably Na'Vi or LGD.
You think it's Na'Vi or LGD? It is going to be. It's neither of those two.
Okay.
I'll give you that much at least. It's newbie actually.
Really?
Lateral drafting, yeah. They are actually fairly well above some of the other teams.
Interesting.
By a fair margin. Most of the other teams come in at a Gini coefficient of about 60, whereas 0 is 100% every single hero gets picked the exact same amount.
Right.
And 100 is every single pick is one hero, which is statistically impossible. Newbie is actually going to come in at about 65 on that scale. Most teams average in around 60 to 62. But DK comes in at a 53.
Interesting.
So they are by more than 10% more, or by more than 10% less predictable in their drafts.
Interesting. So DK is far less predictable, whereas Newbie is very predictable.
Right.
Okay, interesting. So, and the less predictable, the better. I'm still trying to understand these stats. You're very smart.
Yeah. I would argue the less predictable you are, the better it is,
right,
because you're going to be able to draft around your opponent. You're also going to have a lot more options available to you if you have a lot of heroes that you can play successfully. Some people might argue that it's better to just do an alliance and do the same thing over and over again and have nobody be able to contest you.
Right.
I think that it is better because especially me, I like to work a lot with the game theory of drafts.
Right.
I'm very interested in draft theory, and it's very difficult to draft around a team that is going to have a lot of options available to them because it will take you longer to be able to tell what their strategy is being drafted into, and it's going to be harder for you to counterpick them because of that.
Absolutely. So that's interesting. I think that you are right, and I think that newbie is might run into some trouble because of that lack of variance. Like we saw Alliance run into trouble for the same thing, even in this tournament in TI. So we'll be following that, and I'll have, if Gorgon's available on Monday morning, come back and tell us just how the statistics have sort of played out over the previous 3 days. And is our statistics a what's the word I'm looking for? Indicator in the same way that they are for other sporting events. Can we run esports by the statistics, or is it always going to be a feel-based sport? So
it's complicated to get the statistics down to that level. Is the question? It took a long time for baseball to get to that point. So I think that maybe it could be done to a certain degree. There's always going to be gut involved. But I'm definitely not there now. And maybe Phage Guy is. He's much better with the stats than I am. But.
One step at a time. We'll see if we can't get him on Monday to talk about the stats of the TI. So I guarantee he'll be sitting at home statting the entire time. So that said, that's what we got for Dota 2 news. Let's jump over real quick to gaming news in general, some tidbits you need to know. The Destiny beta is now live on PS4, so you can watch the live stream of Destiny. A lot of folks have been waiting for that game to come out, so now's your chance to see it. Other news that is going to be pretty interesting along the same lines as Destiny is that as of right now, Xbone is not running Destiny at 1080p. They're running it, I think, 720. So they're aiming to get it to 1080 one day, but not right now. So yet another argument for the sale of the PS4, which has been dropping off. Now, Xbox One says they've doubled their sales in June. However, they are still being beaten by Sony in terms of overall distribution. So that's not all that great. Let's see.
Yeah, upward trends, man. Business is about trends.
All
it's
about
not about
trends.
what you have in hand. It's about what you're going to have in the future. It's about futures. You want to bet on the futures.
Start low, earn high. So
exactly.
Something else that's in video game news and it carries over into the real news, so it's a good transitional segment for us, is the idea that Xbox, or the company that owns Xbox, Google or Microsoft has, I'm way out today. Let me get that rephrased. Microsoft has announced that they will be laying off a lot of folks. Up to 18,000 jobs will be being cut. And they're going to focus on Nokia, but it will also affect the Xbox. So,
for a company the size of 18,000 jobs sounds like a lot of jobs, right? To the economy, that's a fair number of jobs. But if you think about the size of a company of like Microsoft and the amount of companies that Microsoft actually owns, 18,000 jobs is a drop in the bucket to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? They are employing so many more people than that that's not necessarily an indicator of how strong that company is doing. It's just an indicator of how strong those specific divisions are doing. Right?
Now, and that's what it is. It's division-based. Nokia hasn't been that successful. And by the same token, they are cutting down the Xbox crews a little bit. But that said, that is 14% of the company's staff. So that is still a fairly significant cut. The investors are going to love it. The staff is going to hate it. So something to keep an eye on. They're trying to keep pace with Google, Apple, and Amazon in terms of mobile development. And I think that the cutting of Nokia will essentially open up an avenue for them to really either invest in their terrible, terrible mobile phone platform or maybe rework it and try to get something that actually doesn't suck. So sorry to those of you with Windows phones, but I cannot stand it. So
I still have a phone that's it practically has a wire to the wall. It's bigger than my pocket and flips open as though some sort of magical chest inviting me to speak to my friends. It can't text. It can't play MP3s or anything. So I don't know what the rest of you people even do with your magic boxes, but it's not a big deal to me.
I have a Note 3 with a stylus, and I actually write up game plans for morning shows and other things on it while I'm sitting around. So
I use paper and pencil, and when I can't find a pencil, I just do it in my head.
Fair enough.
And screw it up. Yeah. I'm so old school that I still screw things up in my head, Toffees.
When you get old like me, you've got to find ways to cut down on doing things in your head, because as you've seen today, facts get mixed up as you become older. So for those of you who don't know, Old Man Toffee is probably one of the oldest casters in the game, and sometimes I get details a little bit backwards, but that's just because I'm old and 31. Yeah. So that's it.
That old man 31.
Hey man, in the world of esports, I am grandfather time. You're gonna have to hike up to the top of a mountain to find me in my ashram soon, based on how old I am. So I don't even know. I don't know if
I
ashram's
like
the
how
right
that's
word.
an old person thing. And not,
Yeah, like the guy sitting on the top of the mountain, like the wise old man is always old. He's never like, I'm gonna hike to the top of what's the mountain that they always go to?
Kilimanjaro or
I'm gonna go to the
something.
top of Kilimanjaro to find a 22-year-old who's like taking tequila shots, being like, "What's up? Let me give you some wisdom."
Well, it's maybe you would if they had tequila shots. And we brought them some freedom, Toffees.
You know, if they had a party on the
Brought
top
some
of Kilimanjaro,
freedom
people
and
would
some
go.
Mexican liquor. Then maybe it would be the case more often. That's all I'm saying.
That's our solution for Tibet's problem: is Mexican liquor and freedom. So, 5 things you need to know for your day, and some of these are pretty massive. All right, so not to get depressing, we'll try to keep it on an up note, but it's going to be tough because the Ukraine Malaysian Airlines lost a flight. Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 went down, and this one wasn't lost. This one was shot down while flying over Ukrainian territory by a surface-to-air missile that traveled up 30,000. You can't get me there. 30,000 feet into the air. So we know that was no small thing. That was pretty massive.
Apparently my volume is a little bit low.
I'm fixing
so
it right now.
Oh, great. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with planes having trouble flying in that general region at the moment. I mean, I do know what it is, but it's just don't fly over Ukraine or anywhere in the general Southeast Asia, Eastern European. Just stick to the Atlantic for a little while, it seems like. I mean, 2 flights in the grand scheme of things is not that many statistically, but,
Well,
play the cards you're dealt. Fly to Paris and enjoy some time instead of to Russia.
So, and the big question is, and I turned you up a little. You might have to do a little bit on your end if you can, but I won't worry too much about it. So I think the big problem, though, is that it looks like the last one was a disappearance, and Lord knows why. Maybe it was a similar situation, but at the end of the day, right now, the problem is that this was a military-grade weapon that's not something that a separatist group or a group of terrorists or just punk-ass kids on the ground can get their hands on. This was a military-grade strike, and right now everyone's investigating it, trying to figure out what the heck happened. But a military-level strike against a passenger plane is, if they figure out who it is, an act of terrorism and an act of war in a lot of ways. So this could really result in some huge international action in an area that is already what we call a tinderbox. For those of you who aren't into politics, a tinderbox is a part of the world where the smallest spark will cause it to explode.
And for those of you who aren't into camping, a tinderbox is where you keep things that catch on fire.
So
That's why
they
they call it that in politics, actually. The fire came first before the politics. Well, arguably the politics came before the fire, but
there were actually 2 Neanderthals sitting around the fire pit arguing about how they should light it, and they had a vote that went literally nowhere until the third man walked in. So that said, the Ukraine is a tough place right now. We'll keep an eye on it for you. But there's a lot of finger pointing, but few hard answers, and that's the key. So I won't make any generalizations or sums, as I believe that it's my responsibility not to. But I think it's something that we should keep an eye on. That's a dangerous region. Speaking of dangerous regions, another big one in the Mideast. Remember we were talking last week about the idea that you said the Israel-Hamas thing is going to eventually, hopefully, just solve itself. There's nothing we can do. Hopefully it won't escalate. Well, it escalated, my friend, over this week.
I believe I also said, but it will.
But it
Probably
will.
in about
That
a
is
week
true.
or something like that. So.
And it absolutely has. Tanks have started rolling. So over the last 10 days, Israel has bombarded the Gaza, killing more than 250 people with just basically missile attacks. And it escalated, and now tanks have literally rolled into the Gaza Strip. So this is the first time we've had open invasion in a very long time. And Israel says it's warranted. They're in the Gaza Strip. They're attacking Hamas. They said that there were tunnels that were being dug from the Gaza into Israeli territory, and that is what sparked the mobilization. So that said, this is a pretty big one. So you combine this with the Ukrainian thing, and it means that we have a multi-regional potential for a war to break out. And for those of us in, say, America who are as war-weary as you can get, this is not great news.
Well, yeah, to be, I mean, kind of fair about the situation and not completely blow it out of proportion in that, like, we're talking about areas that have been ready to explode into war for like 2 decades now. You know what I mean? We've had maybe lapses in like, oh, this 6 to 8 month period, it doesn't seem like war's imminent. But for the bulk of a couple of decades, most of that region has seemed like it's going to explode into war any minute now. So it's maybe they can just status quo our way through this one too.
Wouldn't it be?
That's keep limping along.
Isn't that the American way? Just kind of drag our feet behind us until we fall into a victory of some sort lately. So those are the two things to keep an eye on as far as world conflict is concerned. Let's go to some things that aren't quite as disappointing. FedEx drug indictment. So all of those. Have you ever heard the Mitch Hedberg joke about how he loves the FedEx guy because he's a drug dealer and doesn't know it? It's always one of my favorite teams that he does or did.
I actually haven't seen that. I haven't seen that bit, but I can imagine how it would go.
Exactly, and that was exactly him. Drunk makes that comment. Well, that said, FedEx is now under federal scrutiny for shipping prescription drugs from illegal pharmacies to dealers and addicts, and they said that they knew it and enabled illegal activity. So the shipping giant, and the quote from CNN is, the shipping giant said it's innocent and will plead not guilty. Big surprise there. FedEx is saying, hey man, we just shipped the damn packages. It's not our job to investigate them. It's your job to stop the drug dealers. So at the same time, the federal court saying, no man, you got to check this stuff out. So we're going to see if that results in a little more x-rays or more requirements for FedEx to ship, which probably could push them out of business in a lot of ways, as keep in mind that the shipping business right now is one of the least profitable businesses in the country.
Yeah.
And it's another hit is not what they need.
If FedEx goes out of business, then who will carry all those things that I'm not mailing?
Well, and that's the whole thing about it is like these guys are already struggling to, and the only thing that gets mailed is when I have to send a giant package to somebody for like a baby shower,
right. Or like if I bought something on Amazon, right? Like if I shop online, something gets mailed to me.
And Amazon's developing drones to take over the job anyway, so
yeah, there you go.
Lord knows how that's going to go. So FedEx in some trouble. If it goes badly, FedEx is going to be in some financial woes as well, so we will see how that is. Fed may put the giant X on their shipping in general. So Microsoft job cuts, we've already talked about that. 14% of the company being laid off. Not a negative thing in a lot of eyes. The idea that Nokia is being is probably pretty good in the sense of, you know, Nokia was the phone that I had and all of my friends had when I was in 7th grade. And I'm old, so that's a long time ago. And since then, they just really haven't made a stand in the business or in the cell phone groupings, and I'm not surprised to see the change coming. Hopefully, it means that they can move the resources into other development areas, like making my Xbox One more functional for me to own. So that would be lovely of you.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, it's not a profitable sector. You gotta do something to. I don't have a funny thing to say here. It's just like you drop parts of your business that don't work, and that it clearly doesn't work. I haven't heard of a Nokia phone since I was in 6th grade. Like nobody runs Nokia anymore, so it's whatever. You gotta let it go. You gotta let your babies die. Sometimes. That's an awful thing to say.
Yeah,
that's something, just so everyone knows, that's something from the writing business. That's not like, I'm not telling you to drown your baby. I'm not telling you to like drop your baby out the window or anything. I'm telling you, like, in the writing business, they say to kill your darlings, and so in this case, the Nokia is the darling that you're going to kill. It's not literal. Don't kill infants. Infanticide.
Oh man, you know what? Yeah. I just want you to know, Gorgon just had more backtrack procs there than Faceless Void has all TI. Just saying. So that said. Sorry, that's pretty funny. Last piece of information I want to give you guys before our day wraps, or before we stop talking about the news, is a little more upbeat, something that's not depressing news. There has been a reboot, a shakeup at Marvel Comics. You guys probably heard about it a few days ago when they announced that on Tuesday the new Thor is going to be a woman. So, big movement, I guess, for women in comics. I'm sure that she will still be underdressed and over-sexualized, but at least now it's a new hero, Lady Thor, going to be taking over. And they just announced now that the new Captain America, who's taking over, as I believe, I forgot the real Captain America's name, is leaving. And Falcon, his sidekick, the African-American, will be slipping into the red, white, and blue tights. So, this is going to be a African-American Captain America and a female Thor. Would you say that Marvel's trying to come up with a diversified lineup?
Yeah, so this is another thing that I kind of have mixed feelings on, in that, like, I've done, and I've said this on this show before, but I've done an extensive amount of writing specifically about women in various forms of nerd culture, including comics and video games and esports and all that jazz. I've done a lot of editorializing on that subject. I think that they are marginalized a lot. But at the same time, Thor, they'll have to write it in very well, and I fear that they won't, because Thor is based out of a mythos. Like, he's based out of a pantheon, and there is a reason that he's based out of that pantheon. You make him a woman, and then you're just breaking from your source material in a way that feels like a break from the Daiji system.
So, and actually, there was a point brought up by one of our viewers. I think it says Gislin. I don't know how to pronounce the name, but I think that's right. Said that Gislin. How are they going to put that into the format? How are they going to make that work? The only thing I can think of is inside of the same cultural context, mythology-wise, of Thor exist the Valkyries. The idea of like these female warriors in some perception of the Valkyries, they're female like mythical warriors. Others they're not. But I wouldn't be surprised if Thor goes out and a Valkyrie or one of his secondary warriors steps up and takes over sort of the rulership role. So she won't be called Thor.
If they discontinue the Thor line for the new 52 or whatever, and then make a Valkyrie comic, that makes sense to me. But Thor is a person, not a position.
True,
and that's what I'm trying to get at. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just change the gender of a person. You can't make the new person without rebooting the whole series, which they already did like very recently for this whole situation that they're doing with Marvel Comics. But once again, it's a person, not a position. I don't understand how you can have that change diegetically speak. And so that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the writing. I'm not worried about like having a woman in a position of power in the comics. I think that's great. Right. But I'm more concerned about the writing. And in terms of having the Captain America sidekick step in, that I'm a little more okay with. Like, that makes much more sense to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Steve Rogers eventually has to age at some point in time, so that makes some sense to me. It's been a while since I've been plugged into comics, but if you guys want to know more about this, one of my close friends, Heather Antos, is actually very well into the comic thing, and I'll actually ask her about it a little bit. Maybe we can get her on the show sometime when it's more relevant. Absolutely. Because she's an editor, a comic editor. She does a lot of comic reviews and stuff, and you can follow her at Heather Antos, and you can tweet her if you have questions about female Thor, because I have questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, do it. Tweet at Heather Antos. I think it's H. You want to spell that out for our viewers just in case?
HeatheRantos.
So tweet at her, ask her what she thinks about Thor, and maybe include the at Toffees_Dota2 in there, just so that we know that you saw her on Coffees with Toffees, and we can see the reaction that she gives as well, so we can bring it up, maybe get her to guest on the show in the future. So exciting. That's the news for today. A couple of final updates to leave you with, guys. The games start at 12 o'clock EDT. That's in 4 hours, 3 hours and 41 minutes, just about 4 hours. We'll kick off with VG versus Newbie, and in about 7 hours, which is, I believe, I'm bad with math, but 4 o'clock this afternoon or 5 o'clock this evening, EG will face off against DK in a best of 3. So those are going to be the games today. They're going to be epic. They're going to be huge. They're going to be massive. Do not miss them. And finally, to wrap up a show as we have every time for the last 10 days, we're going to give you the Zach Danger Brown update on how much you can make with potato salad. And the answer, sirs, is $50,000,939. So he's about to crack $51,000. Pledged
how much money does he have to raise before he makes potato salad for starving people? Because right now, I'm still not seeing the gain here.
Well, in his defense, he invited the entire internet to come eat the potato salad with him. So anyone who is anywhere near Ohio in 15 days...
Oh, nobody wants to... He invited him because nobody's going to go to Ohio.
Nobody's going to Ohio.
It's a trick.
It's a trick. It's so clever.
As I previously stated, I'm from Michigan, and there's a big Ohio, Michigan.
That is true.
But everyone who drives through Ohio knows it's the worst state to drive through, like in the Union. And it's the most traveled state. It's awful. It's awful. I'm sure it's perfectly nice to live there, but driving through it's miserable. So nobody's going to go to Ohio for potato salad.
The only place worse to drive through, I can guarantee you this right now, is the great state of Texas. Now, I love Texas, but I hate driving through Texas because there's a strip of interstate going from when you come in from the Mojave Desert and go out through the bottom, that is probably, what was it? I think it was like 6 hours of nothing but desert and an occasional roadhouse. It was literally the most boring drive of my entire life. So
yeah, but at least that's literally nothing and not existentially nothing. Which is what Ohio is. Ohio is like staring your mortality in the face and constantly being pursued by cops. And they also knock the speed limit down by 5 miles an hour at the state border just to make you stay longer. Just to really dig it in and make you wonder about yourself.
Oh my. So guys, girls, we appreciate you joining us. We'll end with the Gorgon rant on Ohio. If you like what we're doing, follow me at Toffees_Dota2. We're here every weekday morning. I'll tweet if the show's canceled or something like that happens. It does once in a while when there's some black dates or I'm traveling. Secondly, if you need to catch the cast on the run, we're live on YouTube and we're live on not live. We're recorded on YouTube and recorded on SoundCloud every day after the show within usually about an hour, so you can take us to the gym or wherever you want. And as always, a big shout out to Gorgon for joining me here as the guest today. You can follow him at GodCowDota. Do you have any parting words for the fans this evening?
Over at Join Dota, we're going to be running live coverage of every game, I think, if we can get the writers up to it. Well, obviously, all of our writers are super burned out from getting every single group stage game covered. But we're trying to make sure that we have the writers available to get live coverage for every single game over at Join Dota. So if you can't watch them, you can still stay in touch. And, of course, make sure you're stopping by High Ground TV. We're going to start ramping up the content with a lot more stats work, a lot more theory work, a lot more talking about drafts and stuff. And of course, High Ground is the home of some of your favorites like Kodal Guy and What Is Hip and Mout and so on. So stop on by. We've got a normal everyday schlub who's kind of one of our writers and one of the AT2L guys as well, Wade Dota. Mm-hmm. He's writing a blog about what it's like to be like a not professional caster dude at TI. So that's actually coming along pretty well. So if you're just looking for a good read or whatever, stop by High Ground. Make sure you go there because otherwise they won't know that I'm of value to them, and then I'll need to find yet another gig to make sure that I have my fingers in every pot Dota has brewing.
Nice. And that is good. So, hey, I'm going to leave you guys with a final thought from my wife who texted me during the show because she likes to listen as she's getting ready for work. And she said, I'd like to point out that cell phones weren't commonly used when you were in 7th grade. I was a senior in high school when they became mainstream, so you're actually really, really old. So my wife called me out and called me nice and old for everybody who wasn't paying attention, saying that I got cell phones a lot. I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, that said, guys, we appreciate you being here. I'm going to play a song from my home state of Hawaii for you as we set out because it's Aloha Friday, and boys and girls, there is no work till Monday. And I think hopefully you'll love the song. That said, as always, my name is Toffees. It's been great spending the morning with you. Enjoy the music. I will see you bright and early Monday, and hopefully we hear from you. I'll be tweeting throughout TI. Follow Gorgon, look for the live stats, and that's all she wrote. Toffees out.